So now I get the job of servicing this beautiful little aquarium. It has some absolutely magnificent fish in this tank. They're vibrantly coloured and very, very healthy. Some of them are a tad on the skinny side, so I would like to see them fed just a little bit more. But in general, their vibrance, colour and health is very, very nice. So we're going to give this tank a service now. And the key is don't do too much. Don't water change it too much. Don't clean the filter too much. You want to just improve the environment and not shock the animals. This is one of those tanks that you can stare at for a very, very long time and still manage to see a fish that you think you haven't seen. It's a very busy, very beautiful tank. And I think there's some of the nicest cardinal tetras you'll ever see. Nice and big, nice and healthy, nice and colourful. So the first thing I'm going to do anytime that I start servicing the aquarium is I'm going to test the water, because it's really important to know where we're at to get started before we start testing our water, and then we know if any adjustments need to be made on the completion. Now, despite the fact that these fish really do look quite nice, besides being a little bit on the skinny side, I would like to see them fatten out a little bit more than that. The water quality in this tank is really not ideal, and that would really come down to the fact that there is a lot of fish in this aquarium. It's heavily populated, and then there's just a very small filter in the corner there. So I'm going to give the filter a good clean, and as far as the water chemistry is concerned, there's no ammonia or no nitrite. There's basically no nitrate, but the water is fairly acidic. The KH is 0 and the GH is 0. So therefore the immune system of these fish is going to be fairly challenged. So it is a situation where while everything's stable, it's sort of okay, but doing anything large to this aquarium would be very risky on the fish. So we do not want to do a large water change. We don't want to do too much. It's better to slowly improve the environment than go and do something drastic. The other thing to be aware of too is if you're going to play around with the substrate and there's a whole lot of sediment in the substrate, it is worth putting some polyfilter in the filter if the substrate has not been done for a period of time. If you're regularly doing the substrate, then this issue is unlikely to be a problem, but there does seem to be a fair bit of sediment through the filter, so through the substrate, so I'm not going to play around with the substrate too much until there's polyfilter in the filter. Otherwise there is a risk of hydrogen sulfide, which can actually be poisonous, and with a tank full of this many beautiful fish, that would be absolutely tragic. So the key is do less often than do more. You also really want to have a thermometer in the aquarium. You never want to just trust the heater, particularly as the seasons change. So this tank has just got a little sponge filter in the back of the tank. So what I've done is removed water from the aquarium, and then I'm actually cleaning the sponges in the sponge filter out of water from the aquarium itself. Because once again, it's really important that we keep all the good bacteria in this sponge. Now you can tell from how dirty this water is, and when I just rinse the sponge like that, the amount of crap coming out of this sponge is pretty phenomenal. So it is important that this is done a whole lot more regularly in order for it to be more effective. And considering there is so many fish in this tank, you've got two main options. One is do this process a lot more often, which is sometimes a lot easier to say, especially when life has other priorities. Otherwise, adding a second filter to this aquarium would definitely buy you time as far as the amount of fish that's in the tank's concerned. So if you're not able to service your aquarium as often as you want, to a degree you can overcompensate with the amount of filtration that you've got. The other thing too that I've noticed is that if your aquarium is overpopulated, particularly for the amount of maintenance and water changes that you might be doing on the tank, sometimes you find that you can't fatten your fish up. So you can find your fish a little bit skinny. Even if you are trying to fatten them up, you add more food, and you just don't notice them getting fatter. If that is the case, then sometimes it can just be that the levels of pheromones and phenols have built up in your aquarium, which are suppressants. So more regular water changes, increased filtration, and the addition of something like polyfilter would definitely aid that situation. More filters and less fish are sometimes the answer. Water changes always help. So an aquarium is 50% about water quality and 50% about nutrients. And the nutrients that I highly recommend, particularly for a tank like this, is I will use Tropic Max by Danichi, and I will use probiotics by New Life Spectrum. So these are not pressure cooked processed foods. These are raw state or cold extruded foods. So the nutrients are in a form that the fish can actually use, as opposed to being wrecked by the food production of the actual food itself. And the probiotics has got the probiotic bacteria in it, which means that when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo.